Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that your homeland or country has suddenly become a strategic necessity for the world's most powerful nation. Not because you asked for help, not because you threatened anyone, but because someone else decided they need you. This is not a movie plot. This is not Cold War history. This is happening right now, from Iran to Venezuela to Iraq and now Greenland. The President of the United States has issued words that many allies describe as warnings, others as threats, and some as a fundamental challenge to the modern international order. Tonight, we ask a question the world is quietly asking. If Greenland is on the list, who will be next? To understand why Greenland has suddenly become a global flashpoint, we need to understand what Greenland actually is on, why it matters far beyond its population size. Greenland is the largest island in the world, but it is home to fewer than 60,000 people. It is geographically part of North America, politically connected to Europe, and strategically positioned at the center of the Arctic. More than 80% of Greenland lies above the Arctic Circle. That location alone makes it priceless. As Arctic ice melts due to climate change, new shipping routes are opening routes that could cut weeks off global trade. At the same time, the Arctic is becoming a new frontier for military surveillance, missile defense, and power projection. According to the Associated Press, Greenland sits at a critical crossroads for Arctic security, especially as Russia expands its military infrastructure in the north and China increases its Arctic ambitions. This is not speculation. This is documented reality. The United States is not new to Greenland. The U.S. has operated Thule Air Base, now known as Pichafik Space Base, for decades. It is one of the most important missile warning and space surveillance sites in the world. It tracks ballistic missile launches. It monitors space activity. It serves as an early warning shield for North America. So when the President of the United States talks about Greenland and national security, it is not abstract theory. It is grounded in existing military reality. But security is only part of the story. Greenland holds rare earth minerals essential for smartphones, electric vehicles, wind turbines, military technology, and advanced weapons systems. Currently, China dominates the global rare earth supply chain, according to multiple international economic reports. Greenland represents one of the few places on Earth where future supply could shift that balance. Control of minerals is control of the future economy, and global powers know it. Now we reach the moment that changed everything. In public remarks covered by AP News, the President of the United States stated, "We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security." That is an exact quote. Not "we would like," not "we should cooperate," but "we need." Those words matter. In diplomacy, language is power. For decades, the United States and Denmark have been NATO allies. Greenland is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. That status is internationally recognized. So, when the President of the United States publicly questioned whether Denmark could adequately secure Greenland, it sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. According to reporting referenced by AP and European media, the President suggested that Denmark was not able to ensure Greenland's security on its own. Again, this was not said behind closed doors. It was said publicly. Supporters of the President argue that this is simply realpolitik, the language of power in an increasingly unstable world. They point to Russian military expansion in the Arctic, Chinese economic influence, and the vulnerability of global supply chains. Critics argue something else entirely. They argue that this language represents a shift from cooperation to coercion even when dealing with allies. And that difference is crucial. Greenland did not appear out of nowhere. In recent years, the United States has issued strong warnings, sanctions, and direct actions toward multiple countries: Iran over nuclear activity and regional influence, Venezuela over governance and oil control, Iraq over military presence and sovereignty, Each case involved national security justifications. Each case involved pressure tactics. Each case raised questions about where diplomacy ends and dominance begins. Greenland is different, but the language feels familiar. Here's the key difference. Greenland is not an adversary. Greenland has not threatened the United States. Greenland is connected to a NATO ally. That's why this moment is so significant. When warnings are issued toward enemies, the world expects tension. When warnings are issued toward allies, the world pays attention. Following the president's remarks, global media reacted immediately. European outlets described the comments as unprecedented, destabilizing, and a challenge to sovereignty norms. Political analysts warned that publicly framing Allied territory as a need could weaken trust across alliances. And trust is the currency of global security. One of the most striking aspects of this situation is what has not been clearly stated. The President of the United States has not ruled out any options. There has been no explicit military threat, but also no clear boundary. That ambiguity is powerful and dangerous. In international relations, ambiguity can deter enemies. But among allies, it creates fear. Diplomats understand this. That is why Greenland's leadership, Denmark's government, and European allies began responding quickly and forcefully. Which brings us to what happens next. In this first part, we've established the facts. Why Greenland matters. What the President of the United States actually said. And why those words triggered global concern. But words do not exist in a vacuum. Now you will hear how Greenland's Prime Minister responded using words that shocked diplomats. How Denmark warned that NATO itself could collapse. And how Europe drew a line that may redefine global alliances. Because once a warning is issued, someone always answers. Once a warning is issued, someone always answers. That answer came first from Greenland itself, not from Washington, not from Brussels, not even from Copenhagen, but from the people whose land had suddenly become a subject of global power language. For days after the President of the United States made his remarks, Greenlandic officials remained measured, calm, diplomatic. But then the tone changed. Greenland's Prime Minister addressed the situation publicly, and his words were direct, unusually direct for Arctic politics, according to Time magazine. The Prime Minister stated, "Enough is enough." Those three words echoed far beyond Greenland's icy coastline. They were not emotional, they were deliberate, and they marked a clear boundary. In diplomacy, short statements often carry the most weight. When Greenland's Prime Minister said enough is enough, he wasn't only responding to one comment. He was responding to a pattern in which Greenland was being discussed as a strategic object, a security asset, a geopolitical necessity, rather than a self-governing society with its own people, culture, and political voice. In the same response, the Prime Minister emphasized a core principle. Greenland's future will be decided by Greenlanders, not by external pressure, not by military logic, not by economic leverage. In remarks reported across international media, Greenland's leader made several points unmistakably clear. Greenland is not for sale. Greenland is not a bargaining chip. Greenland is open to cooperation, but only on the basis of mutual respect. He did not reject dialogue, he rejected coercion. This distinction matters. Greenland is often portrayed as remote, isolated, and politically quiet. That perception is outdated. Greenland has been steadily expanding its autonomy, its international voice, and its diplomatic engagement. So when Greenland's Prime Minister spoke firmly, the world listened. Because this was not just about Greenland, it was about whether small nations and territories still have agency in a world dominated by major powers. If Greenland's response drew a line, Denmark's response reinforced it with steel. Denmark's Prime Minister addressed the situation publicly soon after. Her message was calm, but the implications were explosive. According to ABC News and AP News, She stated clearly that any attempt by the United States to take Greenland by force would mean the end of NATO. This was not a rhetorical flourish. This was a direct warning. NATO is the most powerful military alliance in modern history. It has existed for over 75 years. It is built on trust, collective defense, and mutual respect among allies. The idea that NATO could collapse because of internal conflict is almost unthinkable. And yet, Denmark's Prime Minister said it out loud. Why? Because Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. An attack on Greenland would legally be an attack on Denmark. And an attack on Denmark would trigger Article 5, the core of NATO itself. This is what made the moment extraordinary. It was not a rival nation issuing threats. It was an ally warning another ally about the consequences of crossing a line. The Danish Prime Minister did not accuse, she warned. And in doing so, she revealed how seriously Europe was taking the situation. Denmark did not stand alone. European leaders responded swiftly. According to coverage by PBS NewsHour and other outlets, leaders from across the European Union reaffirmed several principles. Territorial integrity is non-negotiable. Borders cannot be changed by force. Greenland's status is a matter for Greenland and Denmark alone. One European leader summarized the sentiment with a phrase echoed across capitals. Greenland belongs to its people. That statement wasn't aimed at confrontation. It was aimed at clarity. Europe has a long memory. It remembers what happens when borders are treated as flexible. It remembers what happens when power overrides consent. That history shapes Europe's response to any suggestion, even hypothetical, of territorial acquisition by force. Greenland became a test case, not of military power, but of principle. Inside the United States, reactions were divided. Some officials and commentators defended the president's remarks as strategic realism. Others expressed concern that the language was undermining alliances built over generations. According to Axios, some senior figures close to the president publicly argued that Greenland should align more closely with the United States. Others emphasized that any future engagement must remain peaceful and cooperative. This internal division only added to global uncertainty. At the center of this controversy lies international law. The rules governing relations between states are clear on one point: territory cannot be acquired by force. This principle emerged from the devastation of the 20th century. It exists to prevent powerful nations from simply taking what they want. That is why legal experts, diplomats, and international institutions reacted so strongly to any language suggesting coercion, even implied coercion. No troops were deployed. No weapons were moved. And yet, the reaction was immediate and intense. Why? Because language shapes intent. When leaders speak publicly, their words signal priorities, boundaries, and potential futures. In geopolitics, words are often the first move. Around the world, public debate intensified. In Europe, commentators warned of a return to might makes right politics. In Greenland, citizens expressed concern, but also pride that their leaders spoke clearly. In the United States, the debate split along familiar lines: security versus sovereignty, strength versus restraint. Greenland, once rarely discussed, became a household name. Here is the deeper question: is this truly about Greenland? Or is Greenland simply the latest place where a broader struggle is playing out? A struggle between rules-based order and power-based order, between consent and coercion, between alliance and dominance. This is why so many countries paid attention. Trust is invisible until it breaks. Alliances like NATO do not survive on weapons alone. They survive on belief. The belief that allies will respect one another's sovereignty. Once that belief weakens, even the strongest alliances become fragile. That is what Denmark's warning was really about. Greenland continues to pursue greater autonomy. It continues to welcome investment and cooperation. It continues to navigate its place between global powers. But one thing is now unmistakably clear: Greenland will not be silent about its future. This moment will not be remembered for what happened, but for what almost happened. It exposed tensions that already existed. It forced allies to clarify boundaries. It reminded the world that sovereignty still matters. And it raised a question that will echo long after headlines fade. When power speaks loudly, who answers and how? Greenland did not ask to become a symbol. But symbols are chosen by history, not preference. In this case, Greenland became a mirror, reflecting how the world treats power, allies, and the smallest voices caught between them. The question is no longer whether Greenland matters. The question is what kind of world decides how it matters. This video is for informational and educational purposes only. All statements are based on publicly available reporting from established news organizations. No claims are intended to promote hostility, misinformation, or political advocacy. Viewers are encouraged to consult multiple credible sources and form their own conclusions.